Welcome everybody, this is the Microsoft 365 Platform Community Call. It is May 3rd, 2022. Spring is moving really fast, and we can finally see that summer is coming pretty soon in the Northern Hemisphere. My name is Vesa Juvonen. I'm a product manager actually in the Microsoft 365 platform, and I'm going to be your host today. Now, today we'll go a typical set of recapping some of the existing assets, what we have available. We also go through the latest news and announcement. Not that many things are happening. I'm going to touch a bit on why is that. And then we'll have the real stars of today, who are Erin, Bert, James, and Nancy. Now, as we go through the intros and just to recap some of the assets which are available for you to take advantage as part of getting started with Microsoft 365 development. So first of all, we have two different YouTube channels. We have the one where we have official videos, mainly produced by our cloud advocates. And then we have our Microsoft 365 community video channel, where we have all of the community call recordings and demos and all of those getting published, and many other videos as well by Microsoft and community members. Now, quick recap on that particular topic, because I get all the time these requests after the recording has been stopped within this course. You cannot access the recording directly from the Teams chat. They will be always published on that particular YouTube channel within 24 hours after this call. So please try to remember that. It will reduce a bit on the incoming messages in Outlook. Now, we have a lot of open source assets available across the multiple different organizations, which we do recommend you to take advantage, and especially looking into samples, which will help you to get started on doing extensibility in Microsoft 365. It might be, however, hard to find what sample is relevant for you in the, let's say, in the abyss of the GitHub. So therefore, that's exactly the reason why we have created these specific portals, which will help you to find what's relevant for you in a more efficient way. So you can either use specific sample galleries, which are, for example, the team/samples or SPFX-web parts, or you can go to the AKMS M365-samples, from where you can find all of the samples of Microsoft Teams development, Office development, scripts, SharePoint framework, and much more. So from a one centralized location. And if you're wondering that there's too many URLs to remember, luckily there's actually only one, which is AKMS M365 PMB. From there you will find all of the relevant assets related on Microsoft 365 platform community. Now, a quick recap in our community call. This is the Tuesday community call. This happens on every single Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific time, except for July and August, because July and August are in the summertime in the Northern Hemisphere, and we're going to have a smaller break on this call. So that's good to put on your calendars already at this point, and that there will not going to be any calls during that time on this particular slot. All of the other calls are intended to actually continue throughout the summer. So we will have actually call at least every single Thursday, which is going to be the Microsoft 365 community or the Viva Connection and SharePoint framework call, because that's happening on bi-weekly on Thursdays. Now, we have a lot of assets available for you related on getting started on Microsoft 365 development. So first of all, always subscribe if you haven't on the Microsoft 365 developer program. You will get a free Microsoft 365 tenant, E5 tenant with 25 accounts. And it's really the easiest way to get started on understanding what is possible within the Microsoft 365. As long as you use that tenant for developer usage, it will renew automatically within every single 90 days. There are some level of an instrumentation in place which will detect that you're actually using that for development purposes and not just as a normal tenant for free, because obviously that would be breaking the terms of usage. Now, the second really cool asset is the AKMS M365 Dev Learn, from where you can find 72 modules already about the development of Microsoft 365, and these modules are getting updated on a quarterly basis. So we're keeping them up to date with the updates what we are providing all the time together with Microsoft Learn and the Cloud Advocates. We also have two great developer podcasts or video blogs, being the Microsoft 365 Developer Podcast hosted by Jeremy Fake and Paul Scheffelin from Adding 365, from where they cover, they always have an typically, at least, they have a visitor where they talk about specific areas on the Microsoft 365 development, and then some news related on Microsoft 365 development areas. Similar kind of a concept on the PMP Weekly, on Microsoft 365 PMP Weekly, a weekly podcast and a video blog with an interview for whatever MVP or Microsoft employee every single week, and then the latest news from Microsoft and the community within that show as well. Now, this one I already mentioned, but just to recap, we do have the unified Microsoft 365 sample gallery available, from where you can find all of the samples from Microsoft and from the community. So you don't actually need to go to a multiple location on finding cool samples from GitHub. You just go to one location, you can use the search, and then find what's relevant for you. If you're looking for a bot or a personal application or whatever you're looking for, you can find that from this location, which is really, really cool. Let's continue. So David, take it away.
So you all may be wondering, where did all those amazing samples come from? Well, they come from community members just like you. But we understand that getting some of those samples into that sample gallery could be a little mysterious. There's a labyrinth of GitHub terms and features that may be a little foreign to you. So Sharing is Caring is here. It's a program that's going to provide you live, hands-on guidance in a safe space opportunity to ask any and all questions. If you would like to learn how to submit your first pull request, if you'd like to learn how to help update Microsoft documentation, set up your workstation for SPFX, do amazing stuff with the VS Code, present on one of these calls, we got you covered. We've got more and more sessions coming soon, and next week is a Power Platform first-time contributors sample session that's going to show you how to get some of those amazing things into that unified sample gallery. Again, all free, safe space, great opportunity to ask questions, work with others in the community. Don't hesitate to take advantage. aka.ms/sharing is caring. Vesa, back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, David, on that one. Now, the next slide, just a quick update on the latest news across the Microsoft 365 area. So the only news what we have from the Microsoft Teams and the developer area and the Viva area and so on is the latest monthly summary from the Microsoft Teams site. This is a really great blog post listing all of the greatest new features across Microsoft Teams from an end user perspective, and it also includes some of the developer topics as well. Now, one of the reasons why it's been pretty silent is that right now, especially on the Microsoft 365 platform side of the house, we are focusing on the build. So there's a lot of recordings going on, and everybody is polishing their slides and making sure that content is ready for build, which is coming quite soon. Now, before build happens in the end of May, we also have this 2-hour special event happening later this week on Thursday, starting from 1:30 p.m. on British time. So that's 2:30 Central European time, which is pretty early for US-based community members. But in this 2-hour event, we will actually build together a real Microsoft 365 scenario, which is all about booking your working seat at the office or in the offices. So it's a really great solution demonstrating Microsoft Teams personal application, bots, Power BI, Viva connection cards, and SharePoint Frameworks solution for intranet. So a really, really cool setup, which we're going to go through this Thursday. And then later on May, we will have the Microsoft Build. So please do just register on that one. That's on May 24th to 26th. You can already right now register on it, and gradually you will start seeing the actual schedule and the topics in the agenda. Now, before we go to the actual stars of the day, and we'll start with Erin on that one, we will do a quick group photo picture together. So those who are willing to enable the video, and let me put that one in there. I'm putting the recording. No waving yet. Wait. We'll fill in the room. I'm just not going to do the recording already. We have 50 seats in a room. And yes, it is a room. I think it was Fabian at some point asking, is it talking about rooms? Yes, it is an actual room. A few more seats in the room. Yes, we're getting more people. I'm here as well. That's really cool. Still a few more seats. Anybody? I guess we're good to go. Let's do some hand waving, everybody. And I can see the ghost in the back row as well. Thank you, everybody, for joining once again on this weekly community call. And thank you for being part of this call. And thank you for, even though Seb is not in the call, people know how to do Seb. So that's really, really cool. Excellent. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Really, really cool. We'll grab AK Funimation out of that. And then it is time to go to the actual stars of today. So that's a quick 10-minute introduction. And then we have 3 demos coming up today, starting with Erin, then moving to Bert and James, and then Nancy as the last one. But Erin, I can see you on a call, and I guess we'll jump on your screen from here.
Awesome. Super excited to be on this call and really excited to be able to share today's presentation with each of you. Just giving a moment to get my slides pulled up. I'm Erin Bailey. Most folks call me by my initials EB, so you may hear that referenced. And I'm a PM here at Microsoft. I work on the Microsoft 365 platform team. And on the whole, I love creating platforms for developers to make useful apps and integrations and bring them to our mutual customers. And that's been the entirety of my career here at Microsoft. Today, I want to walk you through the opportunity and the motivation behind this vision of extending Teams apps into Outlook and Office.com. And I'll talk about our approach towards evolving the Teams JavaScript SDK, which led to this capability. So let's jump right into it. So I'm pretty sure that I'm preaching to the choir here when I talk about the current Microsoft 365 app ecosystem. I think we all know that it's a bit scattered as it is today. If you think about how apps are managed and deployed within Microsoft 365 today, it's not as continuous as it could be. Let's think about the app collections. They vary widely in content and experience from product to product, and they sit in different catalogs. So it's sometimes users struggle with discoverability. And apps themselves are not always called apps. Sometimes they're add-ins or integrations, and the terminology and the capabilities can differ between desktop and web and mobile. If we jump over to the admin side, as we know, admins are really important for getting apps out to users and customers. Admin controls are really product specific. There's separate admin centers for just about every major productivity product. Plus you've got your Azure Authentication Admin Center, your MEM Admin Center, and more. Microsoft 365 apps and services have their own discrete extensibility models. Most of them have their own dev tooling and client-side SDKs as well. And the manifests or the packages that deploy these apps and integrations are product specific, and they require different version for each developer build. So that's the ecosystem as it is today. And as we thought about the next wave of innovation, we challenged ourselves to think beyond just products or services or platforms and new capabilities. We thought about how can we bring convergence and simplification to this app ecosystem? And that's our North Star. So our vision state, and I will be the first to say this is not the state today, but this is the vision state that we're aspiring for, is a unified app ecosystem within Microsoft 365. We want unified app collections in a common catalog so that there's consistent UX discovery for users. And as we get into monetization and commerce, there's a single point of payment and a single point of entry. We want apps to have a single logical container for web or SaaS apps, as well as device applications, mobile applications, and all of the data integrations that happen as well. We also want to bring a consolidated and streamlined admin control so that admins can create policies and enforce them through a single pane of glass, one entry point for all of the management that they need to do. And then when we think about developers, which is I know who most of you are, we want developers to be able to write an app once and run it across all of Microsoft 365. So that means Teams, Outlook, Office, maybe one day even Edge or Windows. And then lastly, we wanted to bring unified manifests, SDKs, and toolkits to developers so that instead of having product-specific packages, everything is unified and everything can sit in one format. So that's the vision state, and that's our North Star that we're striving for. And we're starting by bringing Teams apps into Outlook and Office. So providing a unified app ecosystem for those three hosts, which is built off of and leverages the existing Teams manifest format. So that's what I'm here today to talk to you about, is how you can take an existing Teams app and port it into those other hosts so that you can start to leverage this unified M365 app ecosystem. So 2 links that'll be really helpful as I'm going through my demo. The first is aka.ms/VS Teams Toolkit. That'll give you the developer toolkit, which will help you go ahead and develop a Teams app and then extend that Teams app. The other is aka.ms/Teams.js SDK. So this is a link to our SDK and some of the associated documentation. I don't suggest you try to follow along in real time, but this call will be recorded, as Vesa mentioned, and you can come back to it later. So let's think about a fictitious example here. Let's think about an app called Contoso Action Plans, or CAP. Now, we're all familiar with this company, Contoso. It's a model company that we use in a lot of our demos. So let's imagine we're the Contoso sales team, and they use the CAP app. Ooh, that's a mouthful. They use the CAP app to coordinate their actions with customers. And since they spend a lot of times in teams communicating with their peers and with other colleagues within Contoso, and sometimes with their customers as well, it makes sense for CAP to sit in Teams. And it makes sense for it to be a personal tab in Teams. So a dashboard that a sales representative can go and access to get critical information, and they don't have to leave Teams. Now, the Contoso team also uses Outlook to email their clients and schedule meetings, and they use Office to manage customer decks, their budget spreadsheets, documentation, etc. So how can we let CAP show up in Outlook and Office so that the sales team at Contoso can bring this helpful application to all of the entry points where they're using M365? Well, I'll play you a little video. This is my VS Code environment, and this is what I did to take a sample CAP app that was running in Teams and extend it into Outlook and Office. And there's two commands that you need to run. The first is to upgrade the app package so that it will run in Outlook and Office. So the Teams toolkit has this as a command you can run from the command palette. You'll select the app package, and it will upgrade the app package for you. The second command you need to do is to upgrade the SDK so that it is pointing to Teams.js 2.0. So that's also a command that you can run from the toolkit. You'll select the appropriate app package and the selection within there. And there you go. Once you've run those two steps, so the upgrade to support Outlook and Office and the upgrading the SDK, then your Teams application should be ready to go to run in Outlook and Office. And if you're using VS Code, you then hit F5 to go ahead and run this locally. And what does this look like for the Contoso employees? Well, in their Outlook, they can go and check their emails, and then from that left-hand menu, they can find the CAP application and load it. And the same goes for Office. So this is a new product, office.com, which is now available for all customers. And they can go into the menu in office.com, access that CAP app, and go and use it. So that brings a lot of utility to the Contoso sales representatives and to the Contoso organization as a whole. Let's talk a little bit about how we go about enabling these contextual experiences. One of the key updates available in this Teams.js v2 SDK is the organization of APIs into capabilities. So capabilities are nothing but JavaScript namespaces that contain all the functions that are available as part of the capability. And a host like Teams or Outlook has to support all the functions within a capability to say that it supports the capability. So let's use Outlook and email because I feel like that's a really easy example for most people to understand. Outlook supports the mail capability. So every function within the mail capability will also be available within Outlook. And that's what we mean when we say organized into capabilities. So you as the developer can leverage this capability model to check what is supported in every host. Reminder, our hosts are Teams, Outlook, and Office at this time, and create contextual experiences. Every capability in the SDK has a function called isSupported. So it lets you check which capabilities are available within a particular host. So going back to this mail example, Outlook mail is supported equals yes. Teams mail is supported equals no. It lets you do things like recommend email reminders when you show the app in Outlook because Outlook can support this mail capability, but then hide them in Teams because Teams does not support the mail capability. Now let's look at the core set of capabilities that will be available across all the hosts. To get started, the app needs to initialize and get the right context from the host. And these are standard app loading behaviors and success failure callbacks available in Teams that are now available across the hubs. In addition, the host will now pass additional context like the host name when the app initializes. Lastly, all the OAuth flows that you expect to work in Teams are going to be available in the other hosts as well. So you can have more than one tab in your application, and every host supports the ability to navigate across tabs within the application. And you can also navigate to host-specific capabilities, like clicking a link to start a chat or schedule a meeting, and you can use the capability model and is supported to navigate these host capabilities. Lastly, there's a UX element called task modules. They allow a pop-up experience, which allows a user to focus in and complete a little task. I think of it as a little popover window. And we are bringing an HTML-based approach of creating these little pop-up experiences in all the hubs, and the overall capability is referred to as dialogues within the SDK. So finally, if you have a Teams app, you can easily update it so that it also runs in Office and in Outlook. You'll need to update the manifest to the latest version to indicate that you want your app to extend across Teams, Outlook, and Office. And then you'll also need to update the SDK references from to Teams.js v2 from the current Teams.js v1. And v2 is fully backwards compatible with Teams.js v1. So if your app is a simple personal tab, it only uses core capabilities that are available across all hubs, then you can update the manifest and update your SDK reference and start running the app across multiple hosts. So what's available now and what you can expect with this? The SDK is currently in preview. And so you can, using the links that we shared earlier, you can go check out the SDK and the manifest and start trying that now. At build, so at the end of this month, we are going to move the Teams.js SDK to GA. All of the personal apps will, the personal app capabilities will remain as previews. So what this means is that you can run full-scale pilots with end users in Office and Outlook as preview channels, and it's a great way to get engagement and feedback on your apps and prepare for the GA distribution of Outlook and Office, which should be later this calendar year. All of that is a bit of a mouthful. You know, at the end of the day, my biggest recommendation, other than checking out the SDK and the toolkit that I linked, is to go register for Build, because we're going to have a lot of sessions at Build where we're going to tell you more about this. We're going to have continuous examples and share more resources. So if you haven't yet registered for Build, it's super simple. Register.build.microsoft.com. It's free. It's a great event. We really look forward to seeing you there.
Excellent. So really, really cool. And it's absolutely brilliant that we're aligning gradually now to this model where the same application, we have the same application admin things, we have the same packaging, we have the same control, the same development tooling across the whole stack, which is awesome. This journey will take a while, but we are getting there, and please join on the build, as Erin EB was saying. Really, really cool stuff on the demos in there, and there will be a lot of on-demand sessions and on-demand videos from the build as well. But then it is time to move to the next demos of today. So Bert and James are going to talk about introducing a new Microsoft 365 assessment tool. And the first module within that assessment tool is going to be SharePoint Syntex Module. There's going to be more modules on that tool as well. But I'll let Bert and James to talk about what this means in practice. Take it away.
Thank you, Vesa. Welcome, everyone. My name is Bert Jensen. I'm a senior service engineer in the OneDrive and SharePoint Customer Engineering Organization. And in my day-to-day job, my main role is actually helping ISVs and customers get the most out of their SharePoint developer experience. And with me today, I have James, who's also from customer engineering, but I'll let James introduce himself. James, take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is James Eccles. I'm a customer experience PM on the customer engineering team with Bert. My focus is all around SharePoint Syntex, helping customers adopt Syntex, understand best practices, and how we can use that to improve the product.
Thank you, James. So let's move to our tool, the Microsoft 365 Assessment Tool, which is a brand new tool that we released last week during the AIM conference. And this tool is an open source tool that you can use to run an assessment on your tenant for a particular adoption scenario or deprecation scenario. So adoption is, for example, the case that we have today, SharePoint Syntex. I want to use Syntex, or I'm already using Syntex, and I don't know where Syntex will add value to my tenant because there's so much content. There's like hundreds of thousands of site collections, millions of files. Where does it make sense to use Syntex? So the assessment will help there, and James will dive into the details on what it actually means, the Syntex output, the report, and so on. And I will more focus on the technical parts of the tool, because this Microsoft 365 assessment tool is not just for Syntex. It's a platform, a framework that we'll use for all forward-going adoption or deprecation scenarios. As such, it will also replace the modernization scanner. So for the folks that have used the modernization scanner, that tool was kind of a little bit a homegrown small tool that has been getting more and more features without having the proper rewrite and a proper kind of backing. And with this tool, we hope to have, we actually have changed that to the better. to get started, you can download the tool from the ak.ms/Microsoft 365 Assessment Tool link. And in the demo, we'll show you a bit more on how to do that and what it means to run the tool. Also want to point out that compared to the modernization scanner, there's a ton of improvements in this particular tool. So for the folks that have used the modernization scanner, it worked great, but as soon as your tenant got really, really large, like if you would want to scan like 200,000 site collections, it was kind of sometimes hard to do. And with this tool, you will see there's much more reliability and control for you as a person operating the tool. The tool itself is also open source, meaning you can just look what we built, and you can actually build your own module. So if you have a need in your enterprise to have some kind of a framework that can iterate across content and kind of check certain things, this can be like a nice baseline for you to start writing your own solution. Some technical details about the tool itself. When we run the demo, you'll see that the tool is an exe, Microsoft 365-assessment.exe, which is our command line interface. And the same exe is also used as the actual tool. So the bulk of the logic, the core assessment operations all happen in a web server, ASP.NET Core Kestrel web server. And the command line interface talks to the web server using gRPC as a protocol. So today we have just a command line interface. In the future, we most likely will have another UI layer to make it a bit more easier, although the command line interface is already really great. For the technical folks, all of this is based on .NET 6. There's like a single exe or a single package for Windows or macOS, for macOS and Linux next to the Windows one. And all of that is .NET 6. When developing this, it kind of really blew me away how easy this is with .NET 6. You just build one solution, you test in Windows, and you can just recompile it for macOS and Linux. And with very, very few kind of changes, you have like a single package that works. The package itself contains all the dependencies. You just distribute one file to a Linux host, and it just works. It's great. A bit more about the tool itself. In the command line interface, you have a number of key actions that you can do. You can, and we'll see them in a demo, but you can list running available assessments, start a new one, get a status, pause, restart assessments, generate a report, and so on. All of these assessments, all of these kind of actions, leads to a call to the server, which uses a SQLite database as backing. So compared to the previous modernization scanner, which kept things in memory or just put them directly in a CSV file on disk, this one uses a SQLite database, which enabled a ton of improvements and reliability enhancements. At a certain point, your assessment is done and you want to generate a report, and then we'll actually export data from the SQLite database into CSV and into Power BI. So that then you have both the data in CSV and the Power BI report. All right, let's do a quick demo. So I'm going to shift to my other desktop. Here I am. And let's see, we have a folder. I've already downloaded the assessment tool. You see it over here, Microsoft 365-assessment. And let's just start that one. You can either start it like this, just hit enter, which I'll do in a demo, or you can do something like put the arguments next to the exe and just run it like that. For this demo, I'm going to just run the tool like this, and you get like a version check. The tool starts. So let's first check if there are already assessments done on this location. So if I type list, it will check, is there an assessment server running? And if not, it will start the assessment server. So it will start the web server, and then it will talk to the web server over gRPC and ask like, hey, give me all the assessments that you are aware of. In this case, it is returning 4 assessments which I ran in the past. So you see all of them are finished. Now, in our case, we want to start a new assessment. So starting an assessment is done using a command line, which I'm going to copy and paste. And before I run it, I want to explain a bit more. So you see the start. So we start a new assessment. The mode is syntax. This is the current mode. In the future, you will see more modes, more operations, either adoption or deprecation being added. Authentication mode, you can do application permissions. You can also do interactive and device permissions. So device authentication. Interactive and device are more meant for like, I have access to a particular site collection, or I want to just assess my own site collections, then those work great. If you want to assess your full tenant, you would use application permissions. You can scope the assessment to your full tenant. So which is the case here, I'm scanning my complete tenancy. But you can also scope an assessment via specifying a set of site collection URLs, either on command line or via a file. Then we have the application ID. This is an Azure AD application that you created. In documentation, you can find the exact permissions required for each mode. So syntax requires certain permissions, future ones might require different ones. And then finally, the location to the certificate that we'll use for the app-only authentication. It's recommended to create your own application. If you don't specify an application, we'll default to the PnP management shell application, so the one that you use with PnP PowerShell. If you're using that one, that might be an easy way to also then run an assessment. And finally, there's a syntax full argument, which in case of the syntax assessment, enables it to use search to get additional data. If I hit enter, it starts to check authentication. And then it will enumerate the site collections to assess. So we have 383 site collections, and it starts running. Now at this point, I can close the window and kind of leave it running, and come back later because it runs in background on the web server. But I can just type, for example, now let's do a list, and you see that, okay, we are running 18 site collections done, 5%. This is like a static view. I can also do like a dynamic real-time status view, which is status. Now you see this one just moving along. So you see the counter growing and the number of site collections being processed rising. A key thing that we added here is retries. So with the old monetization scanner, folks sometimes didn't know, is it stuck? Is it still running? Is it being throttled? Yes, no. It was really hard to tell. Here you'll get two numbers. The first number here will tell you like, hey, I'm throttled. I have a 49, I'm throttled. The other one is a network exception. If there's a socket exception, something flaky on network happens, you will be notified as well and will retry. So it's really robust. But if you see like a large number of retries, you know that you might are pushing too hard and you might want to run it with less parallel operations, for example. Right, moving on. So one thing that a common request from the previous assessment of an monetization scanner was like, hey, it takes too long. Can I restart it? Can I stop it? And now you can. You just type pause -ID, you paste the assessment ID, and now the assessment will be paused. And once it's paused, you can just shut down the processes, close your machine, do whatever you want. It's there. It's in a waiting status. So this is all done. If I do now list, you see it's being paused, and now I can just restart it again. And it will start running. So this also will survive like a crash or like a machine reboot. If it's just shut down, you can just pick it up and restart, which is really handy if you have like a huge, large set of site collections to scan. Final thing to show, and then I'll move to James, is the report generation. So I can do a report -ID. Then I need to pick one which is already finished. So let's take this one. All right, and hit enter. And then it's creating a report, and it will open up the report in Power BI. So that's new for this assessment compared to the previous one. The previous one had Excel-based reports. Now we chose for Power BI because that gives way more options to visualize data. It's more flexible. You can easily adjust it for your needs. And also, as an admin, when you run an assessment, you get the report and you can just share it using your Power BI service in your organization. So you can share it with different teams in the organization that need to, for example, work on deprecation or that need this adoption data. Now here is the assessment report for Syntex, and I think I'm going to stop from here. And James, I think you want to take it over and talk a bit more about what this all means.
Thanks, Bert. And before I jump into the report itself, I just want to do a quick overview of what we're talking about when we're talking about SharePoint Syntex, because some of you may not have had the opportunity to play around with this before. So Syntex is really about using AI technology to get the most out of the content we have within SharePoint. And in order to do that, we're really using AI to take the knowledge our subject matter experts have and use that to drive insights. Now, there's a broad and expanding feature set within Syntex, and within the next couple of minutes, I'm not going to be able to talk about all of it, but the most important thing with regards to the assessment tool is the content intelligence section on this slide. So within this pillar of Syntex, we have various AI model technologies which can analyze content, analyze files that are stored in SharePoint, and then generate metadata from those. So automatically populating our columns within SharePoint. Now, why is that interesting? Now, metadata on its own isn't particularly useful, even for those of us who've worked with SharePoint for a long time. We might love metadata, but it's got to have a purpose. Here's just a few examples of how metadata can drive experiences across SharePoint Online and the broader M365 ecosystem. Now, that could be across search around discovery of content, in compliance scenarios, such as with Microsoft Purview, building retention rules, driving e-discovery cases, and so on. Process automation in Power Automate, or even in things like Viva Topics. So using metadata in the taxonomy service to seed the topic center and the knowledge base. So really, what the Syntex assessment is driving at is giving you places where Syntex can help with the metadata story. How can we make that more reliable, more robust, and more scalable in your organization? So this is an example based on my demo environment, just showing you the type of reports that we have within the assessment tool. This homepage gives you a brief overview of the different report pages. And I'll show you a couple of examples to give you a sense of the type of data we're collecting and the recommendations that we're going to make. So starting here on identifying the libraries with custom columns. Within the Syntex assessment, we're looking across all of the libraries on the sites that you put in scope. As Bert said, that could be a constrained list of sites, or it could be all of the sites within your tenant. And we're pulling back particular attributes of those libraries. While it's not possible for us to say exactly where the business processes might exist that Syntex could benefit from, what we can do is find out indicators of libraries that we know from our experience with customers could benefit from Syntex. So for example, libraries that have a large amount of columns, so libraries that are very wide. From experience that I'm sure we've all had, the more columns that exist for a document library, the less likely end users are to be diligent in populating those manually. So the recommendations on this particular part of the report are about identifying those libraries which are the widest within your environment, and then considering whether one or more Syntex models might be appropriate to automatically populate that metadata for you. You can see on the right-hand side visualizations to show which libraries are using custom metadata versus not, how many libraries of different widths we have, and on the left-hand side, the detailed information around specific libraries that we can then go and investigate with the content owner to understand their business process and whether or not Syntex might be of use. Another example we find to be beneficial in Syntex rollouts is the size and structure of document libraries. So we bucket different libraries into small, medium, and large containers as part of the assessment. Large libraries being any library with more than 1,000 documents in them. And the recommendation here is for those libraries which are particularly large, they can be really overwhelming for a user to navigate and browse through. Or even if they're using search, if we don't give them the means to provide a very structured ability to filter, sort, and discover content, it's going to be very hard for them to find the information they need. So by identifying the largest libraries we have here, these might be good opportunities to deploy syntax models to, applying content types, generating metadata, really driving some of those discovery behaviors. Additionally, we show how many folders there are in the library. So while a library could be large and have no folders in it, it'd be very difficult to navigate for a user. Some might have more structure and follow that more traditional directory tree behavior. Now, those might be a less suitable candidate for syntax. So really, this is all about identifying where those top candidates are to begin the conversation with content owners within the business to work out where syntax may be a good fit. That I will hand back to Vesa.
Excellent. Thank you, James and Bert, on that one. Really, really, really cool stuff, and awesome to see this automation in place. And Paul was already saying in the chat that I'm totally going to check out the source code of that assessment tooling, which is open source, so which is really, really cool. Now, as the final demo of today, Nancy Wang is going to talk about Office scripts with a button now in Excel for Windows. So let's actually move on that final section of today. Good morning, Nancy.
Good morning and hello, everyone. Yeah, thank you again, Vesa, for giving me the opportunity to be here today. I also have a presentation for you all, but really want to make it interactive and just get everyone's questions in the room. So I think how we're going to do this is I'll present the slides, but I'll also look at the chat at the same time. So feel free to put any questions that you have there, and I'll try to get to those either in this call or afterwards. So today I want to talk about running Office scripts with a workbook button specific to Excel and Windows, but some of you might have been on this call before, so feel free to, throughout this, if you have things that you've learned about Office scripts over the past few months, past few weeks, feel free to share that in the chat. I would love to hear that feedback. The three main things that I wanted to cover today, one is what is Office scripts? Two, we're going to do a little demo of script buttons based on a sample that we got from a community member. And then the third thing that I want to share with you all is how you can get involved. And so there will be a set of resources that we as a team could recommend for getting started with Office scripts. So this first thing is about what is Office scripts. And I guess in the room, I'm just curious to hear if anyone has used it before. And if so, feel free to drop in the chat how you would describe Office scripts to a fellow colleague or person on this call. I put in a little bonus challenge in there, but really just curious to hear how you would describe Office scripts, because, we as the team have said something like many, many times, but I think there's always more interesting ways to talk about this feature. But in terms of our mission statement for Office scripts, it is to empower Office users to easily automate tasks and processes to run businesses efficiently anytime and anywhere. And so what this means is three different things. So first, this is for Office users and specifically for those that run businesses. And so you'll notice that we're currently on the E3 and E5 licenses, aka the education and enterprise licenses of Office. That's the first thing you should know. The second is that we allow for automation of tasks and processes. And so this is something that within your spreadsheet, you're able to take any repetitive tasks and automate them into a process that you can simplify anytime and anywhere. And then this last thing about anytime, anywhere means that because this is currently a technology that's on the web, you can run it from any browser. Now, with this new update, you can also run it in Windows. And then we can also run this anytime, which means that you can schedule this automation to run even if you're away through the Power Automate tool. And you can even schedule it to run on a regular basis. So those are the three main things that you should take away from this mission statement. I wanted to kind of give a more concrete example of what Office scripts is, since this is all very abstract. So over here, you'll see a screenshot of what Office scripts looks like today. You go to Excel on the web and you'll find us in the Automate tab. You'll notice that scripts are stored within your OneDrive. And so that means a couple things. It means that they can be shared with others in your organization. It also means that they're not attached to the workbook itself. So you can access all your scripts within any workbook that you have in OneDrive. There's a couple tools that you use to create scripts. And so here on the left, you'll see the action recorder, which allows you to capture any actions in your workbook and record it into a script for you, as well as the code editor, which allows you to create scripts and modify the scripts that you have recorded using JavaScript TypeScript code. And so all of this together, you might be wondering, well, like, I think there's a lot of similar technologies to this. So I did want to quickly go over the differences between Office scripts and some of these other technologies that we have today, including VBA and add-ins. So when we think about Office scripts, it's really about how do we approach people that don't necessarily have a technical background or a computer science degree. When we hop into the demo, I'll show you a couple features that we have done intentionally to make this a little bit more easy to use, whether or not you have that programming experience. And then on this other axis, you'll see Web and Collab, which is about allowing people to share these scripts easily within their organization, and more specifically, being able to accommodate for that web platform. I'm seeing some comments in the chat. This is great. Thank you. I'm going to address those after the demo, if that's okay with everybody. As a recap, we have a couple core capabilities of Office scripts, creating the scripts in Excel and the web, being able to run those scripts in the browser, and we'll see again that Windows functionality, the ability to share scripts with other people, and then finally Power Automate integration and being able to schedule and connect your scripts with other parts of the Microsoft ecosystem. All right, so I am seeing a question about signs of life to save Office scripts on a SharePoint site. So yes, that's a really great question. Right now, as we mentioned before, Office scripts are just saved in OneDrive. However, we are looking into a way to share those on SharePoint as well. First of all, because that would allow people to access more scripts, regardless of what workbook you're using, but also because we are thinking about the admin scenario of if someone leaves the organization, maybe there would be a way for them to preserve that script rather than having it go away when they leave the organization. All right, so I'm going to hop over to a demo now because we're running a little short on time, but I also wanted to welcome you all because I noticed some of you are probably part of the M365 dev program or have that E3, E5 license. Feel free to try this out yourself by going to excel.new and selecting the Automate tab. Feel free to do this while I'm sharing or after the call. We just love to get the feedback, and I'm going to share the link to this feedback form as well. This is going to be super helpful for our team. And yeah, thank you, David, for also sharing the links separately. I really appreciate that. All right, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to share. In this documentation, we have this new sample that came out about using a punch clock button. And I wanted to first give a huge shout out to Brian, who is one of the people in the Office scripts community who created this for us. I figured it'd just be cool to see something that someone else created versus our team. And so here, I'm going to show you exactly what that does. And so you'll see that we're in the Automate tab. I'm all the Office scripts functionality here. And what I'm going to do is, let's say that I am an employee who is clocking in and clocking out of work each day. I clocked in last week, and now I've decided that I'm going to clock out. And so the script that I am going to use is called punch clock, and you'll get the code from the sample scenario that I have linked here. But if we look into the code itself, you'll see that this is all based in TypeScript, JavaScript. And I'll give you an example of how you can record scripts like these if we have time for that during this call. But see if I run this script. You'll see over here that I've clocked into my shift. And now let's say that I do want to clock out, but I don't necessarily want to go to the Automate tab and have to select these buttons every single time. So with the new functionality, you're able to now create a script button within Excel on the web. And so if I run this, I would be able to clock out, but I want to show you what that functionality looks like on desktop. And so hopefully this will work. All right, so now I'm in the same, hopefully everyone can see this, I'm in the same workbook as I was before, and I'm going to switch tenants because I think earlier I was in the sample tenant. So now let's say that I want to clock out of my shift. If I select the script again, then you'll see that by selecting the button, I am able to run the script, and then that puts in that time for me. Now, one caveat about the documentation that they mentioned is that if this is any longer than, or any shorter than 1 minute, it doesn't record the duration. So maybe I should have waited another 2 seconds there, but you would also see auto-populated the duration of the script run. And so this is our first Windows offering in Excel for Windows. And so right now you're able to run the script when you have access to the workbook itself, and you also have the ability to view the script itself. So if I click edit here, you can see all the code. At this point, you're not able to modify anything, but you're able to see what the code looks like and modify that, create scripts and modify them on the web. All right, and with that, I'm going to hop back over to the presentation. And while we're waiting for this to load, I'll answer a couple more questions. Carmen asks, is this available for GCC government cloud? It is currently not. However, our team is looking into that right now because we recognize not everyone has that E3, E5 license that I had mentioned before. So that's a great question and definitely some feedback that we want to take back to the team. And do we always need to create a table in Excel to work on the script? The answer is no. You can even manipulate data without a table, and that's one of the differences between us and Power Query. So it's a good question as well. All right, so here's just a brief recap of what we touched on. With the script buttons, you're able to add buttons through the web and you run them within web and Windows, and that allows anyone who has access to the workbook to use your automation. Something we didn't look at is that you can also change the color, font, and shape of these different buttons. So that can be pretty nifty if you want to customize it specific to your workbook. All right, I'm going to zip through this real quick. In the next 2 minutes, I'm just going to show you how you can get involved. And in this, I want to ask if you have a favorite Office Scripts resource. We know that we're pretty fortunate that people have created content for us, like the sample that I just showed you, but also like on YouTube and other sources of media. Really would love to hear how you're learning about Office Scripts today. If you have heard about it before, feel free to drop that in the chat. As for our team, we have 2 main links for you. One of them is the sample scripts page, which shows you the sample scenarios that we looked at just now, but also a couple other examples. And I think David has the link to that, so feel free to check that out on your own time. But we also have this portal, and you can think of that as kind of the home page for Office Scripts, where you can see what's new, as well as the link to some learning resources from our YouTube account. And last thing is that we would love for you to give us feedback throughout the year. So this green rooms, or the link that you'll see when you select this, it allows you to share automation requirements and look at the feature priorities of Office Scripts, as well as looking at some of those early designs of our investigation. So super helpful for us, whether or not you use Office Scripts. We would love to hear about how you automate within Office itself. And so this is just super helpful for us as a team. And again, this is the last slide of the presentation. I just want to give a really huge thank you to everyone, because this is, a new product, and for us, hearing that feedback about how we can improve is really what makes this work meaningful. So, all right, I'm going to pass it back over to you, Vesa.
Excellent. Thank you. Really, really cool stuff. Thank you, Nancy, on that one. It's good to see the progress, and step by step, as always, we get more and more features and capabilities available. And it's great to see the interest and the community involvement already at this point. So awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. But that's it. We have 3 minutes before we close on the hour, which means that we can actually close up pretty much right now. So we will give you a few, maybe 1 minute back on the hour, which is good. So thank you, Erin. Thank you, Bert. Thank you, James. Thank you, Nancy. Really, really great demos this time. We will be back within the next week, of course, a week from now at the same time. We'll have the Microsoft 365 platform community call. This Thursday, we also have the Viva Connection and SharePoint Framework bi-weekly call happening at 7 a.m. Pacific time, if you're interested of those technologies. And in general, you can always find all of the information on the AKMS M365 PMP. And the recording will be available within 24 hours in the Microsoft 365 community YouTube channel at AKMS M365 PMP videos, or M365/videos actually works as well. Easiest way to follow up on when stuff is available is to subscribe to that YouTube channel, or follow us on Twitter, which is Microsoft 365 Dev, or the M365 PMP. And the next Microsoft 365 platform community call happens on May 10th, as already mentioned, at 8 a.m. Pacific time. If you want to download the recurrent invite to these calls, please go to the AKMS M365 PMP. And from there, you can find all of the different calls and their availability schedules, and you can download the ICS as a recurrent entry in your calendar. But that is all what we're going to do today. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Thank you for the lovely discussion in the chat. And thank you for being part of this community. Let's stay in touch. Bye-bye.